Chloe, and I love exploring our amazing world. Today, I'm off to one of my favorite destinations for kids. Want to know where I'm going? Well, then I have a riddle. It's the only place in the world that is an island, country, and a continent all at the same time. I'll give you a hint. It starts with an A and ends with an A. Australia! Come on, we're going to miss our flight. Australia is nicknamed the Land Down Under because of its location in the southern hemisphere. It's the world's largest island, smallest continent, and sixth biggest country. Today I'll be visiting Australia's largest city, Sydney. Sydney is a year-round destination. Any time is a perfect time to visit, so come on, let me show you around. Believe it or not, this world-famous city began right here as a prison camp. I'm here in the Hyde Park Barracks to learn more about Australia's first settlers, the convicts. In 1776, 13 of Great Britain's North American colonies declared their independence. That meant the British had to find a new place to get their timber and send their criminals. When the famous explorer, Captain Cook, discovered Australia in 1788, the British Parliament decided it was the perfect spot. They named their first settlement Sydney, after Lord Sydney. He helped establish the colony. Life for these early convicts was hard. They had to obey strict rules and were expected to work from sunrise to sunset. The convicts made bricks, constructed buildings, planted crops, and built roads. That was their punishment. A loud bell told them when to wake up, when to eat their meals, and when to go to their flour sack hammocks each night. As many as 50,000 convicts lived here throughout the barracks' history. Many of them slept in crowded rooms like this. Step 1. Sit down in the middle. Step 2. Lie back. Step 3. Put your feet up. Today, 1 in 5 Australians can trace their roots to these early convicts. Many prisoners were sent here for minor crimes, like stealing bread to feed their starving families. After learning about the convicts' daily life, I wanted to know more about some of the projects they worked on, so I headed over to Mrs. McQuarrie's chair. Mrs. McQuarrie was the wife of one of Sydney's early governors. She had her husband's workers build her a road from her home to the harbor. She also had prisoners carve her this chair. She used to sit here to watch ships enter and leave the harbor. The view is amazing. Today, Mrs. McQuarrie's chair sits at the edge of the Royal Botanic Gardens. This extensive park is a favorite place for picnickers, joggers, and tourists. And best of all, it's free. A visit to the gardens is a great way to get to know plants from Australia and all around the world. You can also get close to some of Australia's native birds, like the Australian white ibis. But my favorite thing about the gardens is that kids are actually encouraged to run in the grass and climb on the trees. A great way to see the gardens is by taking one of the free walking tours. Or, for a few dollars, you can hop aboard the Red Choo Choo Express. Either way, be sure to stop and see the garden's most famous resident, the dinosaur tree, also known as the Wollemi pine. Before 1994, the only knowledge we had about this unique tree came from fossils. Scientists thought it had gone extinct millions of years ago. But in September of that year, a national park officer in the Blue Mountains near Sydney noticed a clump of strange-looking trees. They turned out to be 6 Wollemi pines. finding those trees would be like seeing a dinosaur stroll through your neighborhood. How crazy would that be? In addition to some pretty amazing plants, the Royal Botanic Gardens offer excellent views of the harbor. Sydney Harbor is the deepest natural harbor in the world. It was a great place for tall ships back then and a great place for cruise ships today. Each year, more than 2 million people visit Australia on cruises. While cruising is definitely a great way to see the harbor, a less expensive option is riding one of Sydney's many ferries. Ferries have been crossing the harbor since the British first arrived in 1789. The double-decker ferries run at regular intervals and will take you anywhere you want to go. Nearly 15 million people take advantage of this unique form of transportation every year. They're one of the best ways to see the city and the harbor. But they aren't the only way. Today I'm riding the Shark Attack, operated by Oz Jet Boating. Just like the ferries, jet boats leave from the harbor's main transportation hub, Circular Quay. They're a wet and wild way to experience Sydney at its best. Boat ride was spectacular. After getting dried off, I decided to visit some of the famous buildings I saw from the water. The harbor's most impressive landmark is the Sydney Opera House. In 1957, the city wanted to build a place that was large enough for major theater productions. So they held a competition. 233 architects from 32 countries submitted designs. The winner was Danish architect Jorn Utzon. He designed the opera house to look like sails on a ship. But the patterns in its tiles make it look more like seashells to me. These special tiles were imported from Italy, and they don't have to be cleaned. The rain takes care of washing them. I wish my room was that easy to clean. On the outside, the Opera House looks like 3 separate buildings. You can even walk or run between them. Inside, the Opera House is one big building with 6 interconnected theaters. The largest and most famous theater is the Concert Hall. Every year, there are more than 1,500 performances. That's an average of 4 shows per day. Today, the Sydney Opera House is the busiest performing arts complex in the world. Not all artists perform in the Opera House, however. Musicians and other performers line the docks at Sydney's main ferry terminal, Circular Quay. It was there I met some of Australia's original inhabitants, the Aborigines. They taught me all about the boomerangs their ancestors used to use to hunt kangaroos, and the traditional instruments they used to make music. Another famous Sydney icon is the Sydney Harbour Bridge. It's nicknamed the Coat Hanger. I guess it kind of looks like one. Completed in 1932, it's still the world's tallest steel arch bridge. It's usually 440 feet tall, but it can grow up to 7 inches taller on a hot day. I'm told one of the best views of Sydney Harbour is from the top of the bridge's pylon. It's 200 steps to the top. But along the way, you learn a lot about this amazing bridge's history. Today, the bridge helps people cross the harbor by train, car, bike, and foot. The climb to the top is a bit exhausting, but well worth the 360-degree view of the harbor. Climbing to the top of the pylon sure made me hungry, so I headed over to a nearby pie shop. Just like hot dogs in America, meat pies are an Australian favorite. Australia is famous for its meat pies, and I'm having one for lunch today. After lunch, I was off to the base of the Harbour Bridge and the area known as the Rocks. The Rocks is the oldest part of Sydney. Most of the buildings were made from local sandstone, which is why it's called the Rocks. This historic neighborhood was built by convicts as a place where sailors could sleep and sell their merchandise. Today, the Rocks is a major tourist area full of art galleries, cafes, and restaurants. In the heart of the Rocks is a sandstone statue dedicated to Australia's earliest settlers. The Rocks is also famous for its charming hotels. I'm staying in the Rocks at the Holiday Inn, which is in walking distance of many of Sydney's attractions.
Welcome to the Holiday Inn, Chloe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Holiday Inn has a great rooftop pool that I love to soak my feet in. Its restaurant also serves one of Australia's most famous desserts, sticky date pudding, which is kind of like gingerbread. Be sure to try some when you're in Sydney. One of my favorite shops in the Rocks is Sticky. Every day, talented candy makers create some of the tastiest hard candy in the world, right before your eyes. Today they're making watermelon candy. The entire process is done by hand. They can even customize orders to your exact specifications. The final result? It looks like watermelon, and it tastes like watermelon. Yum! Across the harbor from the Rocks is Luna Park. Its entrance looks kind of scary, but it actually has really fun rides. Luna Park was built in 1935. I'm here today with my brother to try out some of its famous old-time carnival rides. Entry to the park is free. All you have to do is pay for the rides you want to go on. Park's most famous attraction is its Ferris wheel, which offers spectacular views of Sydney. After taking in a couple of rides, I decided to try one of the park's most famous treats. Back home we call this cotton candy, but here it's fairy floss. From Luna Park, it was a short ferry ride to my next stop, Darling Harbor. Darling Harbor is a fantastic place for kids. This former shipping center was turned into a world-class entertaining complex in 1988 to celebrate Australia's 200th birthday. Today, Darling Harbor has a top-notch aquarium, stylish shops and restaurants, and the world's largest IMAX theater. It also has a maritime museum. Darling Harbor also has a great play place for kids. It's one of Australia's best parks. My first stop was the 32 feet high Octonet. This climbing net is as high as a 3-story building. I couldn't quite make it to the top. The Flying Fox zip line is also fun. Flying foxes are what Australians call bats. And that's exactly what I felt like flying through the air. Australia is a dry country, entirely surrounded by water, just like the Darling Quarter Kids Park. Its network of sandboxes and watery paths represent Australia's landscape. Its gadgets promise hours of fun for kids of all ages. Darling Harbor has other fun things, too. For millions of years, Australia was isolated from other continents. 80% of Australia's species cannot be found anywhere else. Today I'm going to see a few at the Darling Harbor Wildlife Zoo. The Australian green tree frog is native to northeastern Australia. It isn't afraid of humans and has a long life expectancy, which makes it a top choice for exotic pet owners. The Tasmanian devil comes from the Australian island of Tasmania. It's about the size of a small dog. But don't get too close. The Tasmanian devil holds the world record for the strongest, most powerful bite of any animal. Though often called a koala bear, the sleepy koala isn't a bear at all. It's a marsupial, meaning it carries its babies in a pouch. It rarely leaves the eucalyptus trees of eastern Australia. It doesn't even come down to drink water. That's because it gets enough moisture from the leaves it eats. There are 2 types of crocodiles in Australia: salties that live in saltwater and freshies that live in freshwater. Salties and freshies don't get along, and most will be aggressive towards humans if they feel threatened. So keep a safe distance. The cute little Bilby looks like a giant mouse with rabbit ears. He is 100% nocturnal, meaning he's only active at night. His eyesight is really bad, which is why his eyes are so big. Luckily, his giant ears and excellent hearing help him to get around in the dark. Australia's most famous animals are its wallabies and kangaroos. Their powerful back legs help them to jump as high as 10 feet in the air. The fastest kangaroos can travel 40 miles per hour. And here's an interesting fact. They can't hop backwards. A short walk from Darling Harbor is Chinatown. Sydney is a city of immigrants. More immigrants have come here from China than any other country. I'm here in Patty's Markets in Chinatown to do some shopping and enjoy a traditional Chinese meal, yum cha. Yum cha refers to snack-sized portions of food. It's served from carts in bamboo steamers. The tradition was brought to Australia by immigrants from Southeast China. Yum cha used to be served only at breakfast or lunch. But in Sydney, you can have yum cha almost any time of day. Well, it's kind of tricky to eat with chopsticks. The food sure is tasty. From Patty's Markets, I had one more stop to make before ending my day. The wild boar statue at Sydney's hospital. The original boar was carved by an Italian artist and stands in Florence, Italy. According to legend, visitors to Florence who rub its nose will one day return to the city. I sure hope the same holds true in Sydney. Wow, I can't believe my time in Sydney's already come to an end. I sure had a fun time showing you around one of my favorite cities. I hope you'll join me in my next adventure. Until then, remember, traveling's so easy, even a kid can do it.